Coming up, the 90th edition of the Howard Wood Dakota Relays was certainly one to remember. We've got highlights and reaction from this year's much anticipated special events and a number of record-setting performances.
And last year at this time, Douglas High School did not have a baseball team. This year, they do. We'll show you what it took to create the Patriots program.
All that and more coming up on Varsity Sports. And hello and welcome to Varsity Sports alongside Jason Andera. I am Jay Elson. Well, the Howard Wood Dakota Relays took center stage last weekend.
Yeah, top athletes from across the area descended on Sioux Falls for this two-day extravaganza, and we were there to capture some of the biggest moments.
Now, speaking of those big moments, the special events are always a big draw, and we've got Alex Heinert here to tell us who shined brightest in a field full of stars. Alex?
Well, thanks, guys. Well, there aren't many high school track events in the nation, let alone the upper Midwest, that can boast the kind of longevity and or the level of competition that the Howard Wood Dakota Relays do. The 90th edition of the meet featured a record number of participants at well over 3,000 athletes, but only 16 were chosen to compete in the meet's two invitation-only events. This year, the boys' Special 200 and the girls' Special 8 took center stage, and they did not disappoint. Let's go back to Friday night and the boys' 200. As we talked about last week, this group, which featured Roosevelt's Chase Vinatieri, top seed time of 21.9 coming in. Also Spearfish's Damian Hall, one of the best 1 and 200 runners in South Dakota. Minot's Carter Gorney, the top time in the 1 and 2 in North Dakota this year. Bismarck High's Hunter Johnson right behind Gorney in both of those races. And Watertown speedster Mason Herricks. This group maybe didn't have as many state titles as in other years in the Special 200, but it was a very balanced field, everybody in the low 22-second range, and that balance showed early in this race. Coming off the turn, basically a dead heat, a straight line of runners at the 100 mark. But as the group comes down the straightaway, keep your eyes fixed on Damian Hall of Spearfish in lane 3. The Army recruit able to put a little distance between himself and the field, and he knows it as he crosses the finish line. Damian Hall, your winner, in a time of 22.05. The North Dakota crew, they can't believe it as they finished 2-3 in a tight pack behind the Spartan senior. Here now the full results, and as you see, the out-of-state contingent represented pretty well for themselves. Blake Mossberg taking 4th behind Hall and North Dakota's Gorney and Johnson. Mason Herricks of Watertown finishes 5th. A tough night, though, for his AA compatriot Chase Vinatieri, the top seed time coming in, but it just did not click for the Rough Rider senior. He ends up in the back of the pack. On the opposite end of that spectrum, though, Damian Hall of Spearfish, the champion in the 2015 Boys Special 200.
I felt like I had the race. I wasn't sure about at the 100 mark, but I know I came out in the lead. And I knew it was, if I looked right, looked left, didn't see anybody, I knew I had it. Not many people can say they've even been invited to the Special 200, let alone win it. It's a feeling, hell of a feeling.
A half hour later, it was the girls' Special 800 in the spotlight. 25 state titles between this assembled field, 11 of those earned by Ipswich's Macy Hines. Tori Glazier of Custer, a 3-time State A champ, also in the start list, as was Asha Smith of Watford City and her 6 North Dakota state titles, along with 3-time Minnesota Class A champ Kayla Hunter-Cook of Redwood Valley. It felt like it would be anybody's race going in, but to be honest, most did not expect anybody to include Brooke DeVos of Roosevelt. The Rough Rider senior, though, who was taking the place of an injured Courtney Dowling, would take the pace out quick with a 63-second opening lap and would lead up until the final turn. But with 150 meters to go, Macy Hines would go to another gear, running by DeVos and running away from the rest of the field. The sophomore from Ipswich would not be denied her second Special 800-meter title, finishing in a time of 2:11.19. That's the 3rd best all-time mark in South Dakota and only 2/10 off the number 2 spot. Kayla Hunter-Cook would close strong to take 2nd, while DeVos would run a great race to finish 3rd as we take a look at the final results. Thanks to that hard pace from DeVos, a great crowd, and perfect running conditions, we had 6 runners go 2:15 or lower in what was truly a great race all around. But it was the electric performance from one of the state's best ever that we'll remember for a long time.
Going into it, with all the girls who have ran and placed at the state meet and have won state titles before, I knew it was going to be a hard race. So, we just prepared for this as best as I could, tried to set up a good strategy for how to win it. But, either way, I knew I could have come away with a PR and gotten 3rd. I could have won it in 2:16. I mean, that's how loaded the field was. It could have won anyway. So I'm fortunate to get the win.
2 great races there, both of which were on Friday night. What could top that, right, Jay?
Well, how about someone dropping the best high school time in the nation?
In the nation?
In the nation later that evening. Well, Alex is going to be back with full highlights of that and the rest of the Dakota Relays when we come back.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by AE Tech Electrical Training Center in Rapid City. Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields.
I just love coming here because it's one of the best facilities that I get to race at and one of the biggest crowds, which obviously helps in running it. So it's just all around, like they put it on better than any meet that I run at.
Welcome back to Varsity Sports. That was Joe Klecker, a senior distance runner from Hopkins, Minnesota, talking about the appeal of the Howard Wood Dakota Relays. And while local track fans likely didn't know his name coming into this year's meets, they certainly do now after his performance Friday night. Last high school event of day 1 of the Dakota Relays, the boys 3,200 meters. Remember that Will Lauer of Lincoln broke a 30-year-old meet record in this event last year with a 9:07. He was back and favored to defend that title this year. But although Lauer led early on, it became clear after the first mile that Joe Klecker of Hopkins was doing something special. Klecker had been a runner-up behind Lauer at Howard Wood in 2014, but he would be finishing second to no one this time around. Klecker would smash Lauer's meet record by 17 seconds, running a time of 8 minutes, 50.12 seconds, the best high school 2-mile in the nation this year. Lauer would set a PR with a 9:01 in the runner-up spot, but it was the future University of Colorado Buffalo that captured our attention.
I knew that I wanted to race Will Lauer because he's one of the top kids in the Midwest. So I kind of had to convince my coach to let me run it. Even with 400 to go, I thought I was going to run about 8:56, which I would have been happy with, like under 9. I haven't broken 9. My PR before this was 9:06. But when I was coming down the home stretch and I saw like 41 or like 39, 41, I was like, wow, I could run 8:45. But I didn't know how far it was to the finish. That's kind of when I knew, coming off the last turn, that it was going to be something special.
Yeah, something special indeed. Klecker's record-setting performance was the first high school mark to fall this past weekend, and it set the tone for what became a landmark 2 days at Howard Wood. Klecker would share the Friday night spotlight with Brookings' Caleb Ellis in the pole vault. The Bobcat senior, already third best all-time in South Dakota, clears 15:10, putting him a little closer to that top all-time mark of 16:1. He'd win the event by over a foot. Here's what he had to say about it.
I'm always hungry, especially this year when I cleared 15 foot for the first time. I feel like I broke through a wall that could shoot me way up and over anything that I could ever think of. I wouldn't have even imagined this my freshman or sophomore year, but this year it's all been skyrocketed and put into overdrive with what I want and what I'm going after.
Fast forward to Saturday and more field excellence. Spearfish's Jackson Hinch goes 6'8" for the win in the high jump, improving on his own platinum mark from earlier this season. Speaking of platinum, watch Watertown's Macy Denzer here in the long jump. She goes huge off the boards and lands head first, but she won't mind a little sand. That's good for the win at nearly 18.5 feet, the best jump in the Dakotas this spring. To the track, and how about Bismarck's Maddie Shirley Fairbairn? The 8th grader sets a new North Dakota all-time mark in the 2-mile Friday with a 10:33. She follows it up by chasing down Macy Hines in the mile the next day. That's not something you see like ever, but both would break the 5-minute mark, the first duo to do so this spring. The boys' mile just as tight as Lincoln's Will Lauer would outduel Surgis's Jacob Simmons over the final 30 meters, winning in a time of 4:14.69. That's the 8th best mark all time in South Dakota. To the sprints now, we had a couple of tight races in the 100 meters, starting with the girls. That's Denzer of Watertown out quick on the inside. Rapid City Central's Elena Clapprich right there on the outside, but it's Brandon Valley's sensational 8th grader Krista Bickley going right down the middle to earn the win in 12.46. More on her coming up later. For the boys, we had about the same field we saw in the Special 200 Friday night, and we had the same outcome. Spearfish's Damian Hall would complete the sprint double in 10.79, with Minot's Carter Gorney again right behind in second position. South Dakota athletes might have been dominant in the short sprints, but it was all about North Dakota in the 400. Bismarck sophomore Cara Hausler would put in a great time of 56.64 to pull away from the field with ease here, while Century's Jacob Richter would turn in a Landon Yoakum-esque 48.16 second run on the boys' side to beat out Lincoln's Ned Sudbeck and the rest of a loaded field. Yoakum, Richter's former Patriot teammate, on hand for the celebration. Final event of the weekend, the 4x4s, and I couldn't leave you with an image of Macy Hines getting beat, right? She would take the anchor baton here for Ipswich, trailing Arlington's Daley Olson, but look at Hines charge back with a ho-hum 57-second split to take the lead and earn the Tigers their third relay win of the weekend. In AA, Brandon Valley has owned the 4x4 over the last 2 years, but it's Sioux Falls Lincoln in front after a great third leg from Jasmine Cooper. The Lynx, though, would not be behind for long as Krista Bickley would crank out a 57-second split of her own to overtake the Patriots and put Brandon back on top of the podium. For the boys, we can't not mention St. Thomas More. The lasting Cavalier image, though, comes from Alex Clapridge, whose nose starts bleeding right before getting the baton on the final leg. With blood all over himself, he still runs a great anchor carry to add the Class A 4x4 to wins in the 4x1 and 4x2 earlier in the day. Finally, AA Boys 4x4, it all comes down to Isaiah Fettrell of Washington and Jake Richter of Century. And despite a short lead and Fettrell running a 49-second split, Richter throws down a 47.9 to come from behind and give the Pats their second dramatic wood 4x4 win over a Sioux Falls school in as many years. What a way to cap off a fantastic weekend. We saw one outstanding performance after another on the track and in the field. Certainly not a shortage of great marks, but we'll let you know how many were good enough to be considered platinum when Varsity Sports continues next.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by AE Tech Electrical Training Center in Rapid City. Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields.
And welcome back. Well, Alex Heinert is still with us as we've got more high school track and field to digest, leftovers, if you will, from the Howard Wood Dakota Relays. And with that, let's go back into the acceleration zone now. And there's a lot to get to, so I've got a feeling you've chosen a bit longer time for us this week.
You would be correct. Along with needing more time to get through everything, I wanted to highlight a mark that has been around for a few decades, especially after the assault on the Dakota Relays record books lately. We've had 13 high school records broken in the last 2 years, but 2 that no one have been able to reach go back to 1973, 42 years ago, and the same guy was involved in both. Jim Reinhardt of Sioux Falls Lincoln, later of Notre Dame fame, has the 1,600-meter mark at 4:09 and was on the AA medley relay record-holding team that cranked out a 3:27.44. Because it's a half-hour show, because I just took 45 seconds to explain all this, we're going to go with the shorter of the two, the 3:27.44, as our conversation time this week.
All right, that's fair enough. All right, let's do it. The gun is up, and we are off. With Howard Wood in the books now, Alex, what do we know now that we didn't know before?
You know, I would say there were a lot of things confirmed this weekend. We've known for years that Ipswich and Macy Hines are great, and then again, they only strengthened that belief with 3 relay wins and Hines' special 800 victory. I know Hines lost in the mile, but it took a near record to beat her. It was incredible. We're pretty sure that St. Thomas More would be the class of Class A in South Dakota for both the boys and the girls. I feel much more confident about that after this weekend. The Lady Cavs were everywhere, placing top 4 in every relay, winning 2 of them outright, including posting a Dakota Relays record time in the 4x1. The boys were nearly as dominant with wins in the 4x1 through the 4x4 and top 3s in the medley in the 4x8. Nobody's touching those 3 at state.
All right, based on what you saw then, any of your preseason predictions that you're feeling a bit uneasy about?
You know, I know that you and anybody else that watched this weekend would say that I was maybe wrong about the AA races in South Dakota. Sioux Falls Roosevelt's boys and Brandon Valley's girls had great weekends. But while I think they both are going to give Lincoln and Stevens all they can handle at state, it would be silly to overreact right now after one track meet. Stevens looked vulnerable in the relays. That's normally their biggest strength. But they also had to pull out of the 4x8 because 2 of their girls were selected for the special 800. And who knows what that did to Paul Hendry's original plan for this meet going in. Also, do you think that Paul Hendry cares about the perception of his track program at the midway point in the season? He's got 15 state championship trophies at home. I think he's good. I think the same goes for Lincoln. Yes, you and Jandy and I, we won as many relays as they did at the Wood this weekend compared to 2 wins from the Rough Riders. And yes, they'll be better. RHS will be once Taryn Christian comes back fully healthy. But look, just like Stevens, James Jarosky and Lincoln weren't treating this meet like a team competition. Lincoln's depth and their excellence in the 400 up and in the field are still rock solid. I'm not counting out Brandon's girls or Roosevelt's boys, who again were awesome this weekend. But there's just not enough here to make me switch. Talk to me after the Metro Conference meet.
Well, I mean, and to be fair, I mean, you've been very high on Brandon Valley in particular, and you said there's something special going on, so it's we're going to have to see what goes on as the year progresses here. Well, fair enough there. A lot of team talk there. Give us some individuals that made a name for themselves this weekend.
Yeah, of course. That is what the Platinum Leaderboard is all about, Jay. Again, these are the best marks this season in both North and South Dakota. Let's go to the track for the boys. There are lots of names there that we saw in the highlights. Richter, we just talked about. He bumps Brendan Schmidt off the list in the 400. Will Lauer improves on his mile and 2 mile times. Plus, Maywinna Cook and Hunter Layton both earned spots for a couple of great hurdle times. In the field, 3 new marks from familiar faces set at Howard Wood, with Nelson, Hinch, and Ellis all creating more separation between their best and the competition. How about Kellerman Hinton of Ellendale, our first North Dakota Class B boy, making the cut with a triple jump just shy of 46 feet. To the girls now, 3 changes from this week were all at the Wood, and they were all extra special. Macy Hines lowers her 800 time by 4 seconds, while Maddie Shirley Fairbairn goes 32 seconds better than her previous 2 mile mark. That's just insane, and that's what good competition and a big stage can do. The field leaderboard looks very similar to last week with 2 exceptions. Jessica Drady, the defending North Dakota Class A disc gold medalist, is back on here after a big toss at Howard Wood Saturday, and Macy Denzer can now add the long jump to her current list of platinum holdings that include the 1 and the 2. That's 3 Macy Denzers on the platinum marks. And that's about all we got.
Yeah, you beat the time.
Congratulations.
Just barely. Well, that is our time. But one last thing. Now that the Dakota Relays are in the books, what do we have next that we should be looking out for?
Sure. Right now the focus really shifts to conference meets this week, region meets the next week, and then state really not much further after that. There's not a lot left in the season, but we've got a lot more great stuff here on Varsity Sports in the weeks to come as we set up the state meets. Be on the lookout for that.
All right, great stuff, Alex. Thanks for that. When we return, not easy starting something from scratch, but that's exactly what this coach did at one Western South Dakota high school. Jason Andera will take us through the highs and lows of a first-year high school baseball program right after this.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by AE Tech Electrical Training Center in Rapid City. Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields.
And welcome back to Varsity Sports. Well, it used to be that if you went to Douglas High School and wanted to play baseball, you'd have to travel into Rapid City and try out for a post team. That all changed when a man named Josh Wright took it upon himself to give the kids from his school another option. Jason joins us now with more.
Thanks, Jay. Well, there isn't a baseball field within 15 miles of Douglas High School, and the community is made up of 40% military families who tend to move in and out of the school every year or two. Well, that's 2 big strikes against what could be a consistent baseball community. But head coach Josh Wright thought it was worth a try anyway, and because of his efforts, Douglas High School now has a team. This is one of the biggest high schools in the state of South Dakota, and up until this year, they didn't have a baseball team.
And we were just talking one day and asked him, how's the baseball team? Just thinking there was a baseball team, and he said that they both said there's no baseball team.
That was Josh Wright. He's originally from northern Louisiana and landed in South Dakota through his time in the military. And he just could not fathom that a school of this size didn't have baseball. So he decided to do something about it.
There should be a baseball program. So I just kind of said I'm going to do it.
Before Josh could even think about doing anything on the field, he knew there was a lot of work to do off the field.
Well, first thing was I had to get permission. You know, I had to start with the school board. We had three meetings at the school. Then you have to really establish that there's a kid support, that they want to do it. We had a tryouts. 19 kids showed up. So then we just started fundraising. You know, started raising money, sponsorships, and got the parents on board, and raised a good bit of money for a first-year team.
After all the hard work and red tape to build a team on paper, it was time for Josh to build a team on the field.
We have 5 seniors, and we have about 6 solid leaders that I can count on to turn my back, go do something, and they've got the guys going the right place, doing the right thing.
My family's moving after this year, and I'm going to college in Texas, so if I wasn't playing here with Douglas this year, I wouldn't be able to play at all my senior year, and that would really not be fun.
I know most of the seniors really well, obviously, but there's a lot of young guys here. So, I mean, you look at all these younger freshmen, sophomores that have only played pony baseball, and the way that they've came together through each practice, they're getting so much better.
The play on the season for the Patriots continues to get better and better, but so far this season, Douglas has yet to win a regular season game. but becoming more competitive is high on the priority list.
I think we've got the kids there to where winning's fun. You can have fun doing other stuff, but the funnest thing really to do in baseball is to win a game.
Based on our experience level and the number of players that we have, and that given that it's our first year, I think we're doing pretty well.
The future for baseball in Douglas looks bright, thanks to the solid base they've built so far.
And I think it shows that there's a big baseball market at the school, and I look forward to more kids coming out next year and competing with other teams more. So.
All right, Jason, Coach Wright and the Patriots have, of course, as you know, been road warriors this season. Every one of their games has been played somewhere else. So with that in mind, are there any plans in place to build a home stadium?
Well, at this point, no concrete plans to build, but their vision, their goal is to keep this baseball program moving. And if the momentum keeps going the way it is now, it won't be long before they start fundraising to build a stadium right there in Box Elder.
Well, that would certainly do those kids, that program, an awful lot of good. All right, thanks, Jason. The week ahead, we'll offer up some top-notch contests. We're going to take a look at the 7-day outlook when we come back.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by AE Tech Electrical Training Center in Rapid City. Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields.
I want to take a look at some of the best matchups coming up here over the next 7 days.
And we haven't forgotten about baseball and softball either. We're watching some games really closely. You see the first one there, Roosevelt and Mitchell. Wouldn't have pegged that game a couple weeks ago, but now Mitchell's playing at a high level. Some great softball games throughout the week. And at the end of the week, you see some great battles in the WDA, which right now is highly competitive.
All right, that is our time for this week. For Jason Andera and Alex Heinert, I am Jay Elson. We'll see you back here next week.